Hi there, my name is Joe Evanousky, and I was a high school art teacher for 35 long years. I enjoyed teaching very much and the interaction with the students, especially seeing their creativity. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about my background. First of all, I always liked to draw. I learned how to draw from my father just by sitting on his lap watching TV. He drew cowboys and Indians for me. So I would mimic whatever he did. Soon I would start drawing from the comic books and funny books, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Richie Rich, whatever was around. And I continued to do that as I got older, and then I became more interested in art and began doing some paintings. Since then, I took some art classes in high school, and then I went on to college to Kutztown State and decided to become an art teacher. My first job was in Selinsgrove. I taught at the middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade art for 3 years, and then moved down to Williams Valley down in Tower City, where I was the high school art teacher. And at the end of my career, the last 28 years, I did at North Schuylkill High School down in Ashland. I did a lot of different projects over the years, and I did a lot of artwork myself, because when I'm not teaching, I'm usually busy doing artwork. As you can see now, I was just working on a sketch. This sketch is of a coal miner. I enjoy doing stuff that reflects the hard coal region, the Schuylkill County, where the anthracite industry began. So let me take you on a little journey now back in time when the coal region was king. Coal was king, and I'm going to show you some of my artwork that I have matted and framed and have exhibited throughout the area and throughout the state. Okay, let's take a look at that now. I have several of my drawings set up here in the living room. The very first one I did representing the coal region with my art was this one here, and I call it Generations. I was taking a class at Kutztown University working on furthering my degree, and the professor there told us we have to do 3 drawings for his class, and that's all we had to do the entire summer. So I always wanted to do something reflecting my roots and the hard coal region, because my grandfathers and grandparents and some of my uncles worked in the mines, and it always fascinated me. At one time, Schuylkill County was the hottest coal bed in the country, fueling the industry throughout not just the United States, but throughout the world with coal. It was the start of the industrial age, and there were thousands and thousands of people who were employed in the coal regions, and all the wives either worked with raising families or in the factories. And I said, a lot of these towns we see now in the coal region are not as populated and employment is low, but in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, this area was just booming with industry and jobs, and everybody was happy, put it that way. But anyhow, this first drawing I did was entirely of pencil, and I call it Generations. It portrays the 3 generations of the miner's family. This was the St. Nicholas breaker, at one time the largest in the world. Recently it was just taken down, this relic. I wish I would have got some more pictures of it. I do have some from other people, and I did draw this individually one time. As you look in the picture, you see the grandfather going into an old mine shaft to pick up some bootleg coal. Bootleg coal is coal that's left behind, and people sneak in there and actually take it from the coal mine. This is the father here in a modern day miner. You see him with his miner's helmet on and his lamp. And then this is his son. So we have the little boy, his father, and his father. So we have 3 generations of the miner's family there. And I titled the drawing Generations. And this one I don't want to part with because it was the first one, and I put a lot of long hours in this. I did have some prints made of it anyhow. Going on then, down here below you see Caboose. That's another drawing I did, but I started working with charcoal then. My professor at Kutztown wanted me to get away from pencil and he wanted me to start using charcoal to represent the hardness and the toughness of the people at that time. And he thought I could get stronger blacks and whiter whites with my charcoal as opposed to pencil. So I said the first one was done in pencil. Everything else you see now, I work with charcoal. The reason I picked the railroad and the caboose here is because the railroad industry had a lot to do with the movement of the coal from the mines, okay? The railroads were a very big industry throughout Schuylkill County. There were 3 or 4 lines running through Schuylkill County at that time. Coal was being shipped down to Philly. Prior to the railroad, they were using canals down the Schuylkill River because the city of Philadelphia, New York, everywhere needed coal to burn to create the energy. And that really helped boost the industrial age, the industrial revolution. Going back to some of the mining pictures here. Here we have a little boy, I'm going to say probably 13, 14 years old. He's on his lunch break. Now, this is an older photograph I drew from. I'm going to say maybe the early 1900s, 1910, around there, because you can see the helmet here is a whale oil lamp. They used to use whale oil to light up their hats so they could see in the mine. And he's just has his old lunch pail here, and he's just taking a break from the mine that day. I get all my ideas from old pages from the past, from old black and white photographs. And now with the internet, you can search and find almost whatever you want online, which is very helpful. This next one here shows some young boys, and they are called the slate pickers. These boys sat for hours separating the slate from the coal as it came down chutes. And their hands would really get torn up and chewed up a lot, and it was a very hard job just sitting there. And there was one man, an older man, would come around with a little switch it's called, and give them a good crack on the back if they were loafing. So it was very hard work, and it was a long day, 8, 10 hours, maybe 12, and it was for a pittance, a few cents a day. That's all they were paid at that time. After they graduated from being a breaker boy or slate picker, they would go on to work inside the mines like, you know, the rest of the miners would. Now, going over to these 2 pictures here, excuse me, my turnaround here. You see, these boys are a little bit older now. These, I'm going to say maybe 14, 15, 16 years old, and they're drilling for coal by themselves with a hand drill, okay? They're not using any blasting equipment. They're drilling and cracking with chisels and hammers to get the coal, okay? You can see they also have the older helmets or hats on there. There's a little story behind this one here. This is a picture of some coal miners. You see some young boys and an older man here. These guys were called spraggers. And why they were called spraggers is, if you see in their hands, they're holding almost like a baseball bat or a stick. This was used to slow down the mine cars when they were coming down the hill. They had to stick that stick into the spokes to try to slow them down. And many a guy lost his hand or fingers trying to do that because it was a very dangerous job. The last picture I'm going to show you here now, I got from an old newspaper clipping from a Shenandoah Evening Herald, and this is called the Centralia Mine Entrance. I'm sure a lot of people heard of the graffiti highway up in Centralia and the mine fire that's been burning for years and years. The town used to have several thousand people, and now it's down to just a handful. But this was the entrance to a mine in Centralia years ago. Now, I'm going to show you some other things I've taken and done with the coal mining theme here. One thing I wanted to do is to show children and teach them a little bit about the history. So I came up with a coloring book. When I first came up with this idea, my mother actually laughed at me. She said, "Joey, the children, when they color in this book, they're only going to use a black crayon because they're all coal miners and they have the coal dust on them." So I did the coloring book and I just put it aside. Years ago, maybe 5 years ago, my granddaughter was here and we were coloring out on the back porch, and she said, "Grandpa," well, she calls me Buppa because she had a hard time saying Grandpa in the early years, so my name is Buppa to her, and she said, "Buppa, you should do a coloring book," and I told her I did. So she asked if she could see it. I dug it out of the drawer and she said, "Why don't you get that printed?" And I said, "I don't know." The next day I start calling some printers and took them down and had the coloring book printed. So it does show a history of mining. Okay, here's the cover. It shows from one of my original drawings. On the back it shows me sketching and tells a little bit of information about how I came up with the idea and how I continued to do drawings of the anthracite region. So it starts off by showing you early miner with a whale oil lamp. And if you see this picture here, this is the bootleg miner, the grandfather. That also appears right here in the generations. It's the same guy, okay? I just did a line drawing of it, but I also put a little information underneath each page. This one says bootleg miner, which I talked about before. Next one here is I have picking coal, and it shows an old miner with his young grandson picking coal off the slate bank. Here we have being lowered into the darkness, and this is the shaft or the elevator where the miners would go down into the mine every day on a big, with a big crane here. Here's an early coal breaker. These are the slate pickers that you saw over here, very similar, separating the slate from the coal. A little boy taking a water break, okay? Almost similar to that guy, but a different person here. This is a patch town. A lot of you people see throughout Schuylkill County a lot of row homes. Every house is built next to each other. In the 1920s and 30s, sometimes 2-3 families with many children lived in these. All the immigrants came over from Ireland, Lithuania, Poland, Ukraine to work in the mines because of the harsh conditions over in Ireland or England, where it was like almost slave labor. They came to make a new life for them in a new country, and the United States of America was that country. So this is a little patch town. There's several little patches throughout our coal region. This is called wash day, where the mothers of the children, the wives, grandparents would wash the coal miners' clothes, okay, in a wash tub outside. They'd wash their backs. This other one is a young boy just bringing up a coal cart full of coal. Here we have a guy drilling for coal. Here you see the old hand drill in his hand. These guys are loading coal in a car. I also showed some equipment. This is a miner's safety lamp. They take this into the mines to make sure there was no methane gas in the mine. This would be very helpful, and you know, it also helped them light their way, but it would also, oh, this is the safety lamp. Yes, that's what it was for. I'm sorry. You can see him, he has it on the stick here. He's holding it into the mine shaft to check for the gas. Today they have different inspectors with different kind of tools to inspect everything. Here a guy is setting a charge of dynamite into a vein to blast out the coal. This is the old way with the pick and shovel. You can see him picking the loose coal. This guy is a foreman, and he's setting the timber to hold up the mine, the roof of the mine, so that it prevents a cave-in. Some miners coming out at the end of the day out of the mine, and goes up and further on to modern day when they, you know, just get in the coal cars that are pulled electrically into the mines. You see the electric miners' hats now. They're not using the carbide lamps or the whale oil. Here's modern machinery now. You can see the modern drilling operation with the drill. It squirts water out to prevent the coal dust. And this is a miner's car today. It's all electric on rails. It goes right down into the mine. Has brakes, so you don't have to use spraggers anymore. And at the end, I have strip mining, which is a lot different from the deep mining where the actual miners go inside. This is with the big steam shovel, and you just keep loading up the Euclid trucks to take it up to the refine it in the coal breakers. Okay, now let me get back to my desk over here and show you some other things. Okay, we're back. Another thing that gave me a lot of inspiration here, I came across this one day, a pamphlet When Coal Was King, and I know this is sold throughout the area in some of the historical societies. Eckley's Coal Miners Village has it, Pioneer Coal Tunnel, Number 9 Mine carries something like this. But a lot of these photographs in here are what I drew from. It gave me a lot of inspiration. It had breakers, people, and I usually like to draw people. Here you see one picture. This guy is called Grandpa Nabby. And if you ever saw the movie The Molly Maguires, it tells a little bit about the Unions and the Irish Molly Maguires fighting for better rights and better hours and working conditions in the mines. This guy was the oldest person in the film, I was told. And how I know this, I had my art on display at an Irish festival locally at Lakewood Park. And a lady came by it, stood at the picture and started crying. And my wife and I looked at each other strangely and could not understand why she was crying. And so she ran off into the crowd and we were talking to each other, and she came back with this man, which was her brother, and he started crying also and saying, "Oh my God, it's our pop, it's our pop." And then they told us the story about their grandfather, Nabby. I said he was the oldest one in the movie, The Molly Maguires, but when I saw this picture, he reminded me of my grandfather. My grandfather, we called an ethnic name, we called him Tata, and my grandmother we called Baba. That's like the Polish-Ukrainian names we had for them. But my grandfather used to sit on a swing, he'd wear a pinch cap like that, and he had the same kind of spectacles. And I thought he looked really just like my grandfather. In fact, I did a big drawing of that one, and I had him also featured on a note card. So this is a note card from one of my original drawings, but the original drawing, I was lucky, and the couple that came by that knew that there was their grandfather did buy the original picture. So I still have some small prints and note cards made of that. One time people asked me if I ever had a book made, and I said no. So I had a book which I took to display my work at the different shows because it was hard bringing some of the bigger drawings along. And several people asked if they could purchase the book. I said no. I had made it on Snapfish with the help of my wife, of course, because she's a little bit more computer literate than I am. And I didn't want to sell it because it was the only one I had. So then I decided to get a couple printed so other people may enjoy the artwork. So this was actually the cover, I said, of my first one, which was the pencil sketch Generations. And then it goes on to show some other drawings. This one is called Watching for Papa. In the 20s and 30s, when the whistle blew at the coal mines, people always panicked because there was a cave-in. That's why they would blow that whistle. And people would come out on their porches, come out up to the coal mine, walk up and to see what happened and see what damage occurred, if anybody was hurt or injured. And this is a little boy, he just heard the whistle and he comes out on the porch and he's listening and looking to see if his father's coming home from work. This one, I showed you the original one back in our living room. This is another one called Lunch Break. This was lunch break, that was water break, okay? This was wash day, the young wives washing the miners' clothes. I showed you Spraggers, I still have the original of that. This one, Hard at Work and Working for Pittance, is in a private collection, as well as some of these other drawings here. This is the coal breaker at Eckley. They built this just for the movie set up in Eckley for the movie The Molly Maguires. This you might have saw previously in the Generations, but I also did an original drawing just of the bootleg miner going in the #1 mine. Here again we have the St. Nicholas breaker, which was between Shannon and Omonte City. I talked about that earlier. Young miners, there's a miner on his smoke break. He has a pipe in his mouth, and he's taking a little break for smoke here. Picking coal, I showed you something of that before. Here we have Looking Up to Dad. It shows a little boy looking up to his father coming home from work. And ironically, one of the newspaper photographs that I drew from, somebody actually knew who was in that picture. So over the years I've been drawing, it's really ironic that old photographs I've used or old newspaper articles or pictures, somebody actually knew who they were in them. So that was quite fascinating. This is Mule Boy. This is a young boy that used to take care of the mules. Day's End, they're coming out of the mine. This is from an old Shamokin mine. Here we have a guy taking a break, take 5-minute break. This guy's setting the charge of dynamite into the shaft. Baba and Tata. Remember I told you my grandparents, I called my grandfather Tata and my grandmother Baba. And this was an old photograph I saw somewhere in a magazine or book, and I just reminded me of my grandparents with the pinch cap and the pipe. and my grandma always wore a shawl. They're from the old country. Here's the Grandpa Nabby one that couple bought from me because that was their grandfather. Centralia Mine entrance, I showed you that one previously. Young Miners, I have that one. Here's the caboose, which I also showed you, and these are some other train ones. Coffee break, the conductor's taking a little break here, drinking his coffee with the big steam engine. And there's a locomotive going over a train bridge here. I usually do the trains in the wintertime because of all the detail with the gears, and it takes a long time. I also started getting into some sports pictures. Here we have Forward Pass, and this depicts the early days of football. You can see the football players have no face masks, they have leather helmets. It actually reminds me, a lot of people, of the Pottsville Maroons, who were at one time world champions of the NFL. This one's called Leatherhead. It's just a lineman in a down position. Smash Mouth football, what the coal region's known for around here on a Friday night in the high schools. These are two guys. You can see a little bit of a breaker in the background there. I did a couple baseball ones. You might know this one. I call it Bring the Heat. That's Yogi Berra, catcher. Roger Maris, a slugger, and Strikeout King. It's an old-time pitcher from the 1900s. And then to end it, I have a couple pieces that I was commissioned to do for people. This young man was a veteran of the Vietnam War and accidentally had an accident, and his wife wanted me to do a photo, a drawing from a photo to remember him by. This one here is the father and his two sons that work an independent mine down in the Higgins area. And this one here is of the Zangari family, I believe, from Line Mountain. The father and his three boys, and these are his ancestors that worked the mine. They did that, he had that done for a Christmas gift for his wife at one time. So that's just a little bit more about what I really enjoy doing. I said depicting the coal region. I always look for pictures, black and white, that show a lot of emotion. So I'm going to show you some other things I've done over the years. Not necessarily charcoal drawings of miners. I'll show you some of my paintings, which I have done recently. Come on with me now. Okay, besides doing my charcoal drawings, I was also very interested in painting. I'm a person that just can't sit still, to be honest with you. I started doing a lot of landscapes and wildlife. One of the first ones I did, and this is probably one of the first pieces I sold when I got out of college, this is called Pine at Sunset. Just a silhouette, very simple, of a tree. And of course you have the sun with the orange and red sky. Another one I did here is the landscape one. The first one was an oil painting. This is acrylic painting on masonite. I call this one Pine Creek. Next to it here is a canvasback duck. This is oil on canvas. I start doing a lot of birds. And I actually started carving some shorebird decoys and painting them. Below that here you have a Canada goose ready to take flight from the marsh. As I was talking about sports, this was one of the first watercolors I attempted when I was in college. I've never worked with watercolors much. I usually always work with acrylic because I like that they dry very quickly. Since then, I've been doing a new type of painting, a relief painting, and I've been doing a lot of sports themes. Here you can see the Philadelphia Phillies logo, and I have some baseballs around it. And this is all raised to make it look 3D, okay, like a relief. This is for the Philly fans, and of course I'm a Philly fan. Here we have the Philadelphia Eagles with their logo. And of course, we're waiting for another Super Bowl with these guys. And the last one here is a combination of all four Philadelphia sports teams, okay? You see the 76ers in the basketball, which is also inside the P for the Phillies. On the right side of that, you see the Philadelphia Eagle emblem. On the left, you see the Flyers emblem. So it contains the four professional sports teams of the Philadelphia area. I saw this kind of design on a t-shirt, and I thought it would look really cool in a painting. So I did that one. I'd like to show you a couple other ones I did. Let's proceed to see the Okay, we're down here in our rec room. And with all the paintings I do, there is not a lot of wall space, so we're trying to cramp as much as we can. Here I did a one of the New York Yankees. You either love them or you hate them, just like the Dallas Cowboys, I guess. Next to that is the Philadelphia Phillies, and I incorporated the bat, the ball, the helmet, and a Phillies pennant, and have that all framed and ready to go. This is also on masonite, and it's made to look like it's raised up. It's a relief. Let's go onward to some other things I want to show you. Okay, we're going onward now. I'm going to show you some of the decoys I've carved over the years and painted. I was into birds, as you could see, with the wildlife I did before. These are just shorebirds, and there's a little story behind some of these because in the early 1900s, late 1800s, people used to just sit in the bush and pick these birds off, okay? They were getting slaughtered, and in fact, one or two species actually became extinct. This was mostly down in the Chesapeake Bay area. So to attract the birds, they would set out decoys, just like they do duck decoys, and they wait in the marsh or the swamp for the ducks to fly by. They did the same thing with shorebirds, okay? This one's called the Duxbury Peep. I saw a photograph of this in a magazine, and this was my impression of it. You see it's not a lot of detail, like some of these have the feathers painted on a little bit more realistically here and here. This one I just used two old tacks for eyes, and this is an old squared nail head for the beak, okay? And I put it on a piece of a steel coat hanger, actually. Cut a little piece of a tree off there, a branch for the base. Here I had a piece of driftwood for this one, and this is just on a dowel, okay? This one here is preening. What I mean by preening is they clean their feathers with their beak a little bit. So that's called in the preening position. Most of these are a little bit more primitive than some you would see at a big carving competition or something like that, because they were just made to represent the birds that they were going to hunt, and the birds are looking at them from a distance just trying to be called in or attracted to these things here. So art doesn't just have to necessarily be drawing, okay? You can do sculpture. I showed you here some wood carvings of the birds, the decoys I did. I showed you some oil paintings. I showed you acrylic paintings. It's what you want it to be. It's your idea. I want to see how creative you are, and I am going to further this with a special lesson later on, which I'm going to send a little packet out as a gift for everybody to continue creating, okay? Don't be afraid to create. Use your imagination. Look how far Walt Disney came, okay? Everybody knows of Disneyland, Disney World, and how did he get started? He was working in his art studio, and he saw a mouse crawl across the floor. He decided to come up with Mickey Mouse, and from there, everything just ballooned. We have everything with Disney, okay? Everybody knows Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, all over the world. And don't be afraid to use that, okay? Use your creativity. Think big. You can do it. Imagination is very powerful. Thank you.